in the dim quiet of a world untouched by language. Before the first words ever drifted through the air, affection was not spoken, it was felt. It was the warmth of a shared fire, the brush of a hand, the stillness of two beings breathing side by side beneath a blanket of fur and stars. Long before the idea of love poems, dates, or vows, there existed only instinct, and through that instinct, the earliest humans learned how to care. In the prehistoric world, survival was fragile. Every night was a negotiation with the cold, with hunger, and with the shadows of predators that watched from beyond the firelight. And yet, in the middle of this constant danger, something tender began to form, a quiet connection that defied nature's harsh indifference. When one human shared a piece of meat instead of keeping it, when another brushed the snow from someone's shoulders, that was affection, primitive, wordless, and yet deeply human. They did not have the word love. They had warmth, they had trust. And in the stillness of the ancient plains, that was enough. The earliest evidence we have of emotional bonds in early humans comes from fossilized remains, bones found positioned in ways that tell stories of care. One such story is that of a Neanderthal found in Shanidar Cave in modern-day Iraq. His skeleton bore signs of severe injury, a crushed eye socket, a missing arm, a damaged leg that had long since healed. He could not have hunted, could not have gathered food, and yet he lived for years after his injuries. Someone had taken care of him. Someone had fed him, watched over him, and helped him survive. That was affection, carved into bone, preserved across millennia. When we think of early humans, we often imagine roughness, stone tools, growls, survival. But archaeology tells another story, one of tenderness hidden inside that roughness. There were gestures, small and instinctive, that connected them beyond utility. A mother pressing her child close against her chest for warmth. A partner grooming another's hair, picking insects or dirt away. A quiet glance shared across the flickering orange of a campfire. These were not mere instincts of reproduction. They were echoes of empathy. To groom someone is to say, "You are part of my group. Your safety matters." To share food is to say, "I want you to live." To stay beside someone sick is to whisper, wordlessly, "You are not alone." The social fabric of early humans was built from these simple acts. Anthropologists call them pro-social behaviors, gestures that benefit others, often without direct reward. Among apes today, we see grooming, hugging, and reconciliation after fights. Among our ancestors, those same instincts evolved into something even deeper, emotional bonding. Imagine, for a moment, a group of early humans settling near a river as dusk falls. The air smells of wet earth. Children chase each other, laughing without words, their sounds echoing against the trees. An elder sits, shaping a stone tool. Nearby, two adults share a piece of roasted meat. One tears a small bite and places it gently into the other's hand. There is no speech, only the soft crackle of fire, the murmur of the river and the slow rhythm of trust. This, in its most ancient form, is affection. Touch was everything. Without language, touch became the first sentence of emotion. A hand resting on a shoulder could calm a frightened companion. A hug, brief and clumsy, could mean safety after danger. When storms came and thunder cracked through the dark sky, huddling together was not just survival, it was comfort. Each gesture told a story that words had not yet learned to tell. In time, as humans evolved, their capacity for emotional connection expanded. We know this from the size of the neocortex, the part of the brain linked to empathy, social interaction, and memory. Early Homo sapiens had larger, more complex brains than their ancestors. That expansion allowed them to remember faces, form attachments, and mourn loss. Yes, they mourned. Archaeological sites show deliberate burials, sometimes with flowers, beads, or ochre, pigments placed gently around the body. Why would a species do that if not for love, respect, or grief? Each grave was a whisper. You mattered. As they gathered around those graves, perhaps under the same moon that watches us tonight, they felt something ancient and familiar, sorrow mixed with tenderness. And perhaps, in those moments, they touched each other's shoulders, as if to say, we remember. Affection also showed itself through creativity. When early humans painted on cave walls, those images weren't just records of hunts. They were acts of sharing identity, of belonging. When they carved small figurines, like the Venus of Willendorf, it reflected not just fertility, but admiration, awe, even beauty. It was the beginning of seeing others as special, as more than just survival partners. It was the dawn of admiration, the spark of emotional recognition. Their voices, too, though limited, carried affection. The tone of a grunt, a hum, a low cooing sound. These were the prototypes of words like love or care. Parents comforted their children with soft sounds, or hummed to one another beside the fire. Those sounds may have been among humanity's first lullabies. Affection evolved in rhythm with the world around them. When food was scarce, sharing became sacred. When winter was cruel, closeness meant life. And when the danger passed, laughter, that brief, bubbling sound, reminded them that survival was not just endurance, but joy. Some scientists believe laughter itself evolved as a bonding tool, just like grooming among primates. It said, I am safe with you. And perhaps in the darkness of a Paleolithic night, as embers faded to ash, a soft chuckle between friends or lovers carried more meaning than any language could ever hold. But affection was not always gentle. Like all emotions, it was complex, unpredictable. Early humans felt jealousy, fear of loss, possessiveness. These emotions may have shaped early social rules: who could be with whom, who protected whom. Love and conflict were twins, born together, growing together. The balance between connection and control became one of the oldest human struggles. Still, amid all this, affection persisted. It became the glue that held small tribes together, a network of mutual care that gave our species an advantage. Groups who cared for one another survived longer. Children who were loved lived to adulthood. Those who mourned their dead learned empathy, and empathy forged stronger bonds. Through affection, humanity learned civilization. We can still see traces of those ancient gestures today. When someone reaches out to hold another's hand, when a parent strokes a child's hair, when friends laugh quietly in the dark, these are not modern inventions. They are echoes of a world long gone, repeated across 200,000 years of memory. Every act of tenderness you see today is a continuation of that ancient language, the language of touch, of closeness, of care. Imagine again that ancient night. The stars are brighter than they are now, the world quieter. A small group of humans sits close around a dying fire. They share warmth, food, breath. One leans against another, eyes half closed. The sound of insects hums softly through the air. No one speaks, and yet everything is understood. That moment, that silence, is where affection was born. Before poetry, before promise, before the idea of "I love you," there was simply the feeling, pure, wordless, eternal. And as you listen, maybe you can feel it too. That same old rhythm of warmth and connection, alive in every heartbeat since the dawn of humankind. Because in the end, affection is the oldest story we know. It is how the world learned to care. In the dim morning mist, long before the sounds of civilization emerged, early humans moved through the landscape with careful awareness of one another. Their eyes, sharp and attentive, Notice subtle shifts in posture, the faintest tilt of a head, or the quiet pressure of a hand brushing against another. These were the earliest gestures of affection, subtle but deeply significant, and they formed a language far older than words. Cooperation was essential. Survival depended not only on hunting skill, but on trust and mutual care. One individual who showed kindness, sharing food, offering warmth, or guiding a companion through dangerous terrain, strengthened the bonds of the group. Over time, these small gestures became habitual, repeated instinctively, forming an emotional infrastructure upon which the first communities thrived. Early humans also had a keen awareness of vulnerability. Injuries, illness, and age threatened survival. The sight of someone struggling could elicit a response born of empathy. A hand to help, a gathered piece of food, a quiet presence beside the afflicted. Such actions were not motivated by conscious moral reasoning, but by a proto-emotional instinct that connected humans to one another. In effect, the act of caring itself became a survival mechanism. Mothers and caregivers expressed affection most obviously. A mother would cradle her infant, pressing it close to her chest to share warmth and security. The infant's cries were met not just with sustenance, but with soothing touches and soft vibrations, gentle hums, or the subtle rocking of the body. These motions conveyed more than physical nourishment. They communicated safety, reassurance, and an early understanding of attachment. This was the first form of emotional language, long before speech could encode meaning. Pairs and partners demonstrated affection in ways that might surprise modern observers. The prehistoric landscape, wild and dangerous, demanded constant awareness. Yet, early humans found moments for tenderness, brushing the hair of a companion, adjusting a cloak to shield them from wind or rain, or maintaining proximity during rest. Such behaviors were not trivial. They reinforced the bond between individuals, promoting cooperation in hunting, gathering, and child-rearing. A partner's touch could convey reassurance, a sense of security, and the unspoken message, "You are valued. You are safe with me." Evidence from fossilized remains supports the existence of these bonds. Skeletons discovered with healed injuries, or those buried together intentionally, suggest relationships that transcended mere survival. In one site, two adults were found side by side, their positioning implying mutual support. Such evidence indicates that early humans were capable of complex emotional expression, and that affection was an essential part of social life, even when articulated only through touch and presence. Social hierarchies influenced the expression of affection. Not every act of care was equal, and social dynamics determined who received attention and protection. Dominant individuals might show selective affection, reinforcing alliances or ensuring the cohesion of the group. Subordinates, in turn, responded with gestures of loyalty or assistance. This intricate web of interactions formed the foundation of early human society, and within it, affection was both a personal and communal resource. Affection extended to playful interactions. Play among young humans, chasing, wrestling, and mimicry served multiple purposes. It was practice for survival skills. Yes, but it also reinforced social bonds. Laughter, squeals, and mock aggression signaled safety and intimacy, teaching participants both boundaries and trust. Adults observed and occasionally joined in, demonstrating that care was not limited to the most vulnerable, but was woven into daily life, from childhood to maturity. Even ritualistic behaviors hinted at affection's role. Evidence suggests that early humans engaged in shared activities around fire, with repetitive gestures or symbolic objects marking connections. These rituals may have included the exchange of objects, mutual grooming, or synchronized movement, early expressions of recognition, respect, and care. Though we cannot know the exact meaning, The intentionality of these actions speaks to the emotional complexity of early human groups. Affection also influenced reproductive behaviors. Courtship likely involved subtle demonstrations of care and attentiveness, sharing food, maintaining proximity, or offering comfort in times of stress. Such behaviors indicated suitability as a partner and established trust, laying the groundwork for pair bonds. These early rituals of intimacy, though silent, were the precursors to the elaborate courtship practices seen in later human societies. Animals, too, played a role in expressing early human affection. Domestication had not yet begun, but some groups observed and interacted with predators and prey, forming cautious bonds. Protecting a dependent animal, or sharing meat with one, may have been part of the broader emotional landscape, reinforcing empathy and cooperative instincts. The ability to extend care beyond immediate kin reflects the depth and flexibility of early human affection. Communication through touch remained central. Handholds, shoulder touches, and gentle nudges were the primary vocabulary of emotion. Even during conflict, these gestures could mediate tension. For example, a hand on the shoulder might calm an agitated companion. A shared seat beside the fire could signal reconciliation. Early humans developed an intuitive understanding that affection could resolve conflict, reinforce alliances, and stabilize the social group. Affection was often reciprocal. A group member who offered care could expect similar treatment in return, creating a feedback loop of mutual support. This reciprocity strengthened cohesion, ensured survival, and promoted the transmission of skills and knowledge. Through repeated cycles of giving and receiving, early humans learned empathy and developed a rudimentary moral sense, the understanding that one's actions affected others. Emotion and memory were intertwined. Early humans remembered who had helped them, who had protected them, and who had offered kindness. This memory guided future interactions and reinforced social bonds. Over time, these patterns of care became culturally encoded, passed from generation to generation, forming the basis for long-term relationships and community stability. The environment shaped expressions of affection. In harsh climates, physical proximity provided warmth and safety. In times of abundance, sharing reinforced group identity and cohesion. Each gesture of care was both a response to external conditions and a reflection of internal emotional states, creating a dynamic interplay between survival and tenderness. As language slowly emerged, these gestures and rituals laid the groundwork for verbal expression. Words eventually allowed humans to articulate feelings, describe intentions, and negotiate relationships. But even before speech, affection was fully functional, guiding behavior, shaping social hierarchies, and ensuring that early humans could live, thrive, and connect. Consider the nighttime scene of an early human group settling beside a river. The fire crackles softly, embers drifting into the dark sky. One adult brushes dirt from another's hair. A child reaches out to hold a parent's hand, their touch lingering, reassuring. A partner shares a small portion of food, placing it gently in another's hand. These gestures, simple and wordless, resonate with the same principles of care, trust, and emotional expression that have carried humanity through millennia. Even without language, these acts conveyed complex emotional meaning. They communicated concern, loyalty, admiration, and desire. They signaled safety, reinforced bonds, and taught young humans the value of connection. Through these gestures, affection became a guiding force in social life, a quiet but powerful influence on behavior, group cohesion, and survival. The archaeological record continues to reveal these patterns. Fossilized remains, burial sites, and remnants of early settlements provide glimpses into the depth of care early humans practiced. Intentional positioning of the dead, evidence of healing, and the presence of objects associated with companionship all testify to an early awareness of emotional bonds. Through these traces, we understand that affection was not a side effect of survival. It was central to it. As you imagine these ancient lives, think of the countless unrecorded gestures. A hand pressed against a wound, a head gently rested on another's shoulder, a whispered hum to calm fear, a glance that reassured. These were the invisible threads that held communities together, the earliest language of emotion and the foundation upon which human society was built. Through touch, play, shared food, and mutual protection, early humans demonstrated that affection was a crucial part of life. It was not superficial. It was deeply intertwined with survival, learning, and social cohesion. Every tender act, every small gesture reinforced trust, established bonds, and nurtured the young. And in doing so, it created a world in which humans could flourish, long before words could define love or kindness. By tracing these ancient behaviors, we gain insight into our own capacity for connection. The gestures we use today, holding hands, offering comfort, sharing moments of joy, are echoes of these first acts of care. They remind us that empathy and affection are not modern inventions. They are ancient strategies for survival, deeply embedded in the human experience. Affection, in its earliest forms, was both quiet and profound. It shaped behavior, guided relationships, and ensured the continuity of the species. Long before art, language, or religion, humans expressed care through presence, touch, and shared experience. As the seasons changed and early humans moved across forests, plains, and river valleys, their relationships evolved alongside their environment. The need for cooperation had never been greater, and within that necessity, the first intricate patterns of intimacy began to emerge. Bonding was no longer only about survival. It became about connection, mutual understanding, and emotional resonance. Pairs formed in ways that were subtle, instinctive, and deeply meaningful. Without words, early humans communicated interest through shared attention, mirrored gestures, and gentle touches. A partner might follow another during foraging, remaining close enough to signal protection, yet far enough to allow independence. The simple act of proximity carried a language of care and recognition that was understood without explanation. Affection between pairs was expressed in myriad ways. Brushing debris from a companion's skin, adjusting a cloak, or offering a piece of food were daily rituals of intimacy. Such actions reinforced bonds and communicated a silent promise. I see you. I am here. I care. These gestures, repeated over time, created trust that would sustain the pair through danger, scarcity, and hardship. Child-rearing provided another context in which affection became vital. Infants were entirely dependent on adults, not only for food, but for protection, comfort, and guidance. Parents, siblings, and other caregivers engaged in gentle acts, rocking, humming, pressing children close for warmth. These early expressions of love were deeply intertwined with survival. Children who received care and attention were more likely to thrive. Yet beyond utility, there was emotion, a recognition of individuality, a desire for connection, and a willingness to nurture. Pair bonds were often fluid, yet significant. Partners shared not only food and shelter, but protection, guidance, and social learning. These bonds were observed in the ways individuals tended to each other's wounds, assisted during hunts, and coordinated in gathering. Such cooperation was underpinned by a foundation of mutual care, the earliest form of social contract, built upon affection rather than written law. Rituals, too, played a crucial role in fostering intimacy and connection. Even in the earliest settlements, shared actions, building shelters, tending fires, or marking territories, carried symbolic meaning. Some evidence suggests that early humans engaged in coordinated movements, repetitive gestures, or the exchange of tokens. These acts were not utilitarian alone. They reinforced bonds, signaled loyalty, and allowed individuals to express feelings that could not yet be verbalized. Courtship behaviors emerged as one of the most complex arenas of early human affection. Food sharing, playful teasing, physical closeness, and protective gestures all served to communicate interest, compatibility, and trustworthiness. These behaviors were subtle, often nearly imperceptible to outsiders, but fully understood within the social context. The repetition of these gestures over time established pair bonds that could persist for seasons or even years. Touch remained the most direct and meaningful form of communication. A hand resting on a shoulder, a brief embrace, or the gentle interlacing of fingers conveyed reassurance and intimacy. Even in moments of conflict, these gestures mediated tension, reminding individuals of their bond and reinforcing social cohesion. Affection, in this context, was both a personal experience and a group stabilizer. Shared experiences strengthened emotional connections. Hunting together, protecting the young, and surviving environmental challenges created interdependence. Through these trials, trust deepened and affection became embedded in daily routines. The rhythm of life, dawn and dusk, hunger and abundance, danger and safety, dictated opportunities for connection, and humans instinctively seized them. Evidence of these early rituals appears in burial sites, artifacts, and patterns of habitation. Fossils show care for the elderly, healed injuries, and positioning that implies deliberate attention. Objects placed near the dead, pigments applied with intention, and clustering of bodies indicate that early humans valued relationships and recognized the significance of connection. These traces suggest that affection was not incidental, but central to social organization, group. Dynamics influenced intimate relationships, competition. For mates coexisted with cooperation for survival. Individuals navigated jealousy, rivalry, and alliance, developing strategies for maintaining bonds while negotiating social hierarchies. Affection and desire were intertwined, complex and sometimes contradictory, reflecting the richness of early human emotional life. Play and shared activities were important components of early human intimacy. Children and adults alike engaged in games, mimicry, and cooperative tasks that reinforced social bonds. Laughter, gentle physical contact, and synchronized movements conveyed safety, trust, and connection. These experiences taught empathy, respect, and the value of nurturing relationships, lessons carried forward across generations. Nonverbal communication remained paramount. Facial expressions, posture, and subtle gestures were constantly observed and interpreted. A glance could indicate interest, concern, or reassurance. A tilt of the head or a leaning closer could signal willingness, curiosity, or affection. These silent cues allowed early humans to navigate complex social landscapes without words, creating a sophisticated system of emotional signaling. Pair bonding also had implications for group stability. Individuals who demonstrated care and reliability gained social status, while those who failed to nurture risked isolation. Acts of affection were thus both personal and political, influencing alliances, cooperation, and resource sharing. Through this system, early humans learned that emotional investment could yield tangible benefits, protection, support, and enduring companionship. Courtship often incorporated symbolic behaviors. Objects, sounds, and shared activities served as tokens of interest and loyalty. Exchanging food, creating small carvings, or performing coordinated gestures were ways to express desire and commitment. These proto-rituals of intimacy were the foundation of cultural practices surrounding love, partnership, and family. Evidence of jealousy, grief, and mourning demonstrates that early humans experienced a full range of emotions. Loss of a companion or mate elicited behaviors that suggest sorrow and remembrance. Individuals tended to the sick or wounded, suggesting empathy and foresight. Even in the absence of language, the depth of these emotional experiences indicates that affection was a central feature of human life. Touch, ritual, play, and shared experiences collectively formed the architecture of early human intimacy. Affection was deeply practical, ensuring survival, yet simultaneously emotional, creating bonds that endured beyond immediate needs. These behaviors were adaptive, reinforcing cooperation, strengthening pair bonds, and cultivating group resilience. In daily life, gestures of care were subtle but profound. A parent adjusting a child's position, a partner guiding another through dense forest, or a group huddled together for warmth exemplified the integration of affection into practical activities. Even the smallest gestures had meaning, communicating concern, loyalty, and desire for closeness. Through repetition and attention, these acts became a shared language of connection. As communities grew, affection extended beyond immediate pairs. Elders, children, and less directly related individuals were included in networks of care. Teaching, protection, and guidance were intertwined with emotional investment, creating complex social webs. The capacity to extend affection beyond kin indicates the sophistication of early human emotional intelligence. Early humans also demonstrated creativity in expressing care. Decorated objects, painted walls, and personal adornments served not only functional purposes but conveyed attention, admiration, and respect. Through these symbolic actions, individuals could express feelings that words could not yet encode. Affection, thus, was intertwined with innovation, imagination, and cultural development. Even in times of scarcity or danger, humans maintained these connections, sharing the last piece of food, comforting the frightened, or tending to injuries reinforced the importance of emotional bonds. Affection was not optional. It was essential to survival, cohesion, and the continued flourishing of the group. Intimacy and social cohesion co-evolved. As individuals nurtured each other, they reinforced social norms, strengthened alliances, and created networks of trust. These networks became the foundation of early human society, illustrating that affection was not merely a private emotion, but a critical adaptive strategy. By observing these ancient behaviors, we can see the roots of modern human relationships. Our capacity for empathy, love, loyalty, and mourning are inherited from these earliest gestures of care. Every hug, shared meal, or comforting touch resonates with this ancient lineage, a testament to the enduring power of human affection. Even without words, early humans created a rich tapestry of emotional expression. Through touch, ritual, play, shared challenges, and mutual protection, they communicated care and love. These behaviors were the cornerstone of survival, the essence of social life, and the earliest forms of what we now call intimacy. As you reflect on this world long past, imagine the small moments of tenderness that defined it. A partner smoothing the hair of another, a child nestled against a caregiver, a group huddled close under the night sky. These were the building blocks of human emotional life. Affection was learned, practiced, and passed down, echoing through generations and shaping the trajectory of our species. It was a world without words, yet full of meaning. Each gesture carried weight, each touch conveyed reassurance, and each shared experience strengthened bonds. From these quiet, subtle beginnings, the human story of love, connection, and intimacy emerged, a story that continues to unfold in every act of care we offer today. The first light of dawn filtered softly through dense forests and wide plains, casting long shadows across a landscape inhabited by early humans whose lives were intertwined with both danger and connection. Affection, in these ancient communities, was no mere nicety. It was a lifeline, the invisible thread that wove individuals into cohesive groups, allowing survival, trust, and cooperation to flourish. From the earliest glimmers of awareness, humans learned to care for one another not because of language, but because instinct and observation demanded it. Pair bonding, an essential foundation of prehistoric society, manifested in subtle but profound ways. Partners observed each other with careful attention, noting behaviors, habits, and tendencies that indicated reliability and strength of character. A partner who shared food, groomed another, or maintained vigilance during the night sent clear signals of dependability. These gestures were the earliest forms of courtship, grounded in both emotional resonance and survival strategy, demonstrating interest, care, and mutual investment. Rituals of intimacy emerged as natural extensions of these interactions. Before spoken words existed, humans expressed connection through coordinated movement, touch, and shared attention. For instance, sitting beside one another around a fire for warmth was not solely practical. It was a gesture of trust and comfort. Careful placement of bodies, the offering of food, or a gentle touch on an arm communicated reassurance, attachment, and interest. Through these repeated acts, bonds strengthened and the foundation of early human intimacy took form. Mating behaviors were intertwined with these acts of care. Affectionate gestures, brushing dirt from skin, adjusting clothing, offering warmth, conveyed suitability as a partner and reinforced social bonds. These behaviors were ritualistic in their subtlety, repeated over days, weeks, and seasons, creating patterns of attraction, trust, and commitment. Though not codified or verbalized, these practices established the principles that would govern reproductive choice, cooperation, and familial stability. Family structures, while fluid, were central to emotional life. Infants and children were not merely dependents. They were recipients of attentive care that fostered both survival and emotional development. Parents and older siblings shared the responsibilities of protection, feeding, and guidance. These actions were suffused with affection, gentle touches, comforting hums, rocking motions, and close physical contact created bonds that would carry the young through the vulnerabilities of early life. Attachment was not only emotional, it was strategic, ensuring the continuance of the group. Affection within families extended beyond direct caretaking. Adults demonstrated concern for the emotional well-being of children, guiding social learning, modeling cooperative behavior, and providing reassurance through touch and presence. These interactions communicated values of trust, empathy, and reciprocity, establishing foundational social norms. Even play, with its laughter, mimicry, and physical engagement, served as a medium for affection, reinforcing bonds, and teaching emotional literacy. Groups also displayed intricate dynamics of care. Individuals attended not only to kin, but to others whose survival impacted the collective. Injury, illness, and weakness elicited support from multiple members of the group. Healed skeletons of injured adults provide physical evidence of such care, indicating that early humans extended affection and assistance beyond immediate family members. These acts promoted cohesion, stability, and resilience, forming a social fabric grounded in empathy. Pair bonds were strengthened through shared responsibilities and coordinated activity. During hunts, gathering expeditions, or communal shelter maintenance, partners relied upon one another for both practical and emotional support. Proximity, mutual vigilance, and reciprocal assistance reinforced trust and intimacy, embedding affection within the rhythms of daily life. Even minor gestures, sharing warmth, passing food, or adjusting clothing, carried profound meaning, acting as continuous reinforcement of social bonds. The expression of desire and attraction was nuanced and context-dependent. Jealousy, competition, and negotiation coexisted with care and empathy, reflecting the complex interplay of survival imperatives and emotional connection. Early humans understood the balance between individual need and group stability. Their behaviors suggest an awareness of fairness, loyalty, and the consequences of neglecting social bonds. Affection, therefore, was not only a personal emotion but a social tool, influencing hierarchies, alliances, and long-term reproductive success. Ceremonial and symbolic behaviors played a significant role in reinforcing pair and family bonds. Artifacts, pigments, and structured living spaces suggest that humans engaged in ritualized actions that communicated care, commitment, and respect. Even the positioning of bodies in burial sites implies deliberate attention to relationships and emotional significance. Through these practices, humans externalized affection, creating tangible expressions of care that endured beyond the immediate moment. The tactile dimension of early human intimacy was central. Hand-holding, grooming, gentle caresses, and close physical presence formed a vocabulary of touch. These gestures conveyed reassurance, loyalty, and emotional connection in ways that words could not yet capture. A partner's touch could soothe anxiety, reinforce trust, and communicate subtle messages of desire or approval. Through touch, early humans navigated the complexities of attachment, bonding, and conflict resolution. Affection also intersected with survival strategies. Individuals who demonstrated care were more likely to receive support in return, creating networks of mutual aid. Trust and emotional investment became adaptive, ensuring protection, access to resources, and stability within the group. Thus, love, care, and intimacy were entwined with practical considerations, forming the basis of social cohesion and evolutionary advantage. Play and social interaction were integral to the cultivation of affection. Through games, mimicry, and cooperative challenges, humans reinforced bonds and established hierarchies without violence. Laughter, synchronized movement, and shared triumphs communicated joy, connection, and trust. These interactions were not superficial. They built resilience, emotional literacy, and social cohesion, laying the groundwork for complex societies. Care and empathy extended to older members of the group. Elders, though less capable physically, contributed knowledge, guidance, and emotional stability. Groups that preserved and protected their elders benefited from their experience, ensuring survival strategies and cultural knowledge were transmitted. This intergenerational care reflects the depth and sophistication of early human affection, demonstrating that emotional investment was both adaptive and valued. Even in moments of scarcity, affection persisted. Sharing limited food, maintaining warmth during cold nights, or tending to injuries demonstrated prioritization of relationships over immediate self-interest. Such behaviors reinforced bonds and communicated enduring loyalty, teaching younger members the significance of care and cooperation. Affection, therefore, was inseparable from social and survival. Strategies, observation, and imitation were key mechanisms for transmitting affection. Children and adolescents learned through watching and participating in acts of care, gradually internalizing norms of empathy, cooperation, and bonding. Through repetition, these behaviors became embedded in cultural memory, forming the basis for enduring practices of love, nurture, and family stability. Affection, thus, was taught, learned, and perpetuated, ensuring the continuity of social cohesion across generations. Early humans also demonstrated subtle innovations in expressing care. Decorated objects, patterns on shelters, and intentional arrangements of personal items communicated recognition, respect, and attention. Through these symbolic gestures, individuals expressed emotions that were not easily articulated through touch or action alone. Affection became both practical and symbolic, embedding itself into the physical and social environment. Partnerships were multidimensional, encompassing cooperation, protection, and emotional resonance. Early humans developed strategies to maintain bonds, negotiate conflicts, and cultivate intimacy without spoken language. Through repetition of gestures, shared experiences, and mutual attentiveness, pair bonds became resilient and adaptable, capable of sustaining groups through both scarcity and abundance. Family dynamics mirrored these practices on a broader scale. Care extended beyond immediate offspring to siblings, distant kin, and other group members. Teaching, protection, and emotional support created networks of interdependence, fostering group cohesion and resilience. These practices reveal that early humans understood the value of affection not only as personal emotion, but as a cornerstone of societal survival. Affectional behavior was adaptive, shaping the evolution of human cognition, social intelligence, and emotional depth. The consistent display of care, empathy, and loyalty reinforced trust networks, improved cooperation, and increased reproductive success. Humans who engaged in these behaviors were more likely to thrive, survive, and pass on both genes and cultural knowledge. Through these patterns, we begin to see the origins of modern human relationships. Touch, ritual, play, and caregiving were not mere survival tools. They were early forms of intimacy, shaping expectations, behavior, and social norms. The principles established by early humans, reciprocity, empathy, attentiveness, and mutual support, continue to underpin human connection today. Imagine a scene as the day fades into evening. A small group rests beside a riverbank. Partners sit close, sharing warmth. A child leans against a caregiver, fingers tracing the lines of a hand. Two adults exchange food, gestures slow and deliberate, carrying meaning beyond sustenance. Even in silence, the bonds are clear, mutual care, shared attention, and emotional resonance fill the space. Every touch, shared meal, and coordinated movement communicates a history of affection stretching back tens of thousands of years. Early humans, without words, without written law, without formal structure, created societies based on connection, empathy, and care. Their gestures were small, repeated, and intentional, yet they carried the weight of survival, the promise of protection, and the foundation of love. As twilight descended across the plains, early humans moved with a careful awareness of one another, their lives intertwined in subtle patterns of care and connection. Courtship was not marked by spoken promises or elaborate ceremonies. It was encoded in gestures, presence, and the quiet consistency of attention. A partner who walked beside another during a hunt, who shared the warmth of a fire, or who offered food first, was demonstrating interest and suitability. These acts were observed, remembered, and often reciprocated, forming the earliest social contract of intimacy. The evolution of pair bonding was gradual, yet profound. Individuals learned to read each other's behaviors, to recognize reliability, and to respond to care with care. Prolonged proximity allowed patterns of trust and attraction to solidify. Partners who coordinated movements, maintained vigilance for one another, and engaged in shared tasks developed stronger emotional connections. Through these repeated interactions, affection became the scaffolding upon which early human social networks were built. Intimate social networks were vital for survival. A group's cohesion depended not only on immediate family, but on extended connections between unrelated individuals. Early humans demonstrated a capacity to extend care beyond kin, responding to injury, illness, or vulnerability with supportive gestures. This broader system of attention reinforced both emotional bonds and group stability, ensuring that individuals who might otherwise be marginalized were included, protected, and nurtured. Rituals emerged as structured methods to reinforce these bonds. Simple actions, coordinated movement around a fire, shared grooming, or the exchange of objects conveyed emotional significance. Though silent, these rituals communicated loyalty, attraction, and mutual respect. They provided a framework for interactions, guiding behaviors, and establishing norms within the social group. Courtship often included displays of skill or provision. Individuals who could obtain food, create tools, or maintain shelter were demonstrating competence and resourcefulness, qualities valued in partners. However, these displays were intertwined with care, providing for another was both practical and affectionate. Through these acts, early humans signaled commitment, reliability, and attention, reinforcing pair bonds over time. Playfulness served as another avenue of intimacy. Mimicry, teasing, and cooperative games allowed individuals to test boundaries, demonstrate social intelligence, and convey interest in one another. Laughter and gentle physical engagement communicated safety, joy, and mutual investment. Even in moments of challenge, these playful interactions reinforced connection, making bonds more resilient to conflict or external stress. Touch remained central to all forms of early intimacy. A hand on the shoulder, a guiding arm, or the simple act of sitting close conveyed reassurance and emotional presence. In contexts of courtship, touch was selective and meaningful, marking individuals as companions or partners and signaling intention without words. Over time, the accumulation of these tactile interactions created deep familiarity and trust, foundational to lasting pair bonds. Shared responsibility for offspring reinforced these intimate networks. Caregiving, teaching, and protection were not solely duties. They were expressions of affection that solidified partnerships and group cohesion. Individuals who demonstrated consistent care for children gained social standing, trust, and respect within the group. This dynamic intertwined emotional attachment with survival, ensuring that affection and competence were inseparable in the development of social networks. Conflict, too, was navigated within these frameworks of intimacy. Disagreements, competition, or jealousy were tempered by gestures of reconciliation, shared tasks, proximity, or grooming behaviors. Early humans developed intuitive strategies to repair bonds using attention, touch, and cooperative action to restore trust. These processes reinforced both pair bonds and broader social cohesion, embedding the principles of care into everyday life. Even minor gestures were significant. Offering food, adjusting a cloak, or sharing warmth carried meaning far beyond the immediate act. These repeated behaviors accumulated into a recognizable pattern, signaling reliability, attentiveness, and emotional investment. Through these consistent expressions, early humans cultivated social networks capable of sustaining both survival and intimacy. As communities expanded, the complexity of these networks increased. Multiple pair bonds, extended family connections, and cooperative alliances created a dense web of interdependence. Individuals navigated these relationships with a keen understanding of reciprocity, attention, and care, demonstrating emotional intelligence long before language could codify it. Affection was no longer isolated to pairs or parents. It was a property of the community, flowing through multiple channels and reinforcing group stability. In twilight and darkness, these networks became visible in the quiet acts of attention. Partners sitting close, children leaning into caregivers, or a wounded individual tended by others demonstrated that early humans had mastered the art of distributed care. Every interaction, gesture, and ritualized behavior contributed to the survival and cohesion of the group, weaving affection into the very fabric of prehistoric society. These social bonds laid the foundation for the evolution of human intimacy. From subtle gestures to structured rituals, early humans demonstrated a capacity for emotional depth, empathy, and trust that continues to shape human relationships today. The networks they created were both adaptive and deeply effective, ensuring not only survival but the continuation of care, cooperation, and affection across generations. As the sun rose over the distant hills, early humans moved carefully through a landscape that demanded constant awareness and adaptability. The lives they led were filled with both danger and opportunity, and the emotional intelligence they developed was as crucial to survival as any stone, tool, or hunting strategy. Understanding the feelings and intentions of others was necessary not only to maintain pair bonds, but to navigate the broader network of social relationships within the group. Early humans learned to read subtle cues, shifts in posture, tension in muscles, changes in breathing, or the smallest alteration in gaze, as indicators of mood, need, or intention. Conflict inevitably arose, even in tightly knit groups. Competition for resources, mates, or attention created moments of tension. But early humans developed strategies to manage disagreement while preserving social cohesion. Conflict resolution was often nonverbal, relying on gestures, touch, proximity, and carefully observed behaviors. A partner who had been angered could be soothed by a gentle hand on the shoulder, the offering of food, or a cooperative action in shared tasks. These early strategies demonstrate that affection was not merely an emotional experience but a mechanism for maintaining group stability and trust. Within pairs, conflict resolution was intimately tied to bonding behaviors. Disagreements could arise over access to resources, child-rearing decisions, or the distribution of attention within the group. Early humans responded with deliberate care, approaching a partner with calm gestures, avoiding threatening postures, and maintaining gentle physical contact. The recognition of distress and the intentional efforts to repair bonds illustrate a sophisticated form of emotional intelligence, the ability to understand, predict, and influence the emotions of another individual. Extended family networks amplified these dynamics. Caregiving was shared across multiple generations, with siblings, grandparents, and other relatives participating in nurturing, teaching, and protection. Affection was distributed. Attention and support were not limited to parents and children alone. This diffusion of care strengthened group cohesion and ensured the survival of vulnerable members, creating an intricate web of emotional interdependence. Rituals and repeated behaviors reinforced both intimacy and social bonds. Regular acts, sharing meals, maintaining proximity during rest, grooming, or performing coordinated tasks, communicated attention, respect, and loyalty. These rituals were simultaneously practical and emotional, grounding relationships in the dual necessity of survival and mutual care. Even without words, early humans demonstrated intentionality in the timing, frequency, and nature of these gestures, showing awareness of their effect on others. Emotional intelligence extended to observation and anticipation. Individuals learned to predict responses to actions, recognize signs of distress, and adjust behavior accordingly. For example, a partner showing fatigue might be relieved from a task or offered support in gathering food. A child displaying fear could be soothed through touch, song, or close physical proximity. These responses reflect a cognitive sophistication rooted in both empathy and practical problem solving. Within pairs, mutual attunement developed over repeated interactions. Partners became sensitive to the smallest cues, a glance, the tone of movement, or an incidental gesture, interpreting them as expressions of need, desire, or reassurance. This attunement fostered resilience in relationships, allowing early humans to maintain bonds despite environmental stress, scarcity, or competition. Intimacy, therefore, was both emotional and strategic, integrated with survival imperatives. Conflict among groups was managed through similar mechanisms. Negotiation, submission, or demonstration of attention served to prevent escalation, maintain alliances, and ensure collective security. By attending to the needs and responses of others, early humans minimized risk while reinforcing cooperation. Affection, in this sense, was functional as well as emotional, shaping behaviors that enhanced group survival. Child rearing remained central to expressions of affection. Beyond providing food and warmth, caregivers nurtured social and emotional competence. Through consistent attention, gentle correction, and shared play, children learned norms of empathy, cooperation, and reciprocity. They internalized the practices of affection observed in adults, forming the foundation for the next generation's capacity for bonding, trust, and emotional intelligence. Extended networks facilitated teaching, guidance, and social learning. Knowledge about safe foraging, Shelter building, hunting strategies, and social negotiation was passed along through observation and imitation. Yet this transmission was suffused with emotional context. Care for others reinforced attention, engagement, and learning. Teaching was not cold or utilitarian. It was intertwined with affection, creating lasting bonds and shared purpose. Affection also mediated hierarchy and social dynamics. Dominant individuals maintained their influence, not only through strength, but through the distribution of attention, protection, and care. Subordinates responded with loyalty, cooperation, and attentiveness, reinforcing the social structure. Through these interactions, early humans learned that emotional engagement was inseparable from social organization, and that acts of care could stabilize relationships and promote harmony. Touch and proximity continued to be vital in these networks. The act of sitting near, leaning close, or adjusting another's clothing conveyed concern, intention, and attention. Such gestures were amplified in moments of stress or danger, signaling reassurance and mutual support. These repeated behaviors created an implicit understanding among group members, embedding affection in the very structure of social life. Even minor acts carried weight. Sharing the last portion of food, adjusting a resting partner's position, or tending to minor injuries communicated commitment and reliability. Through repetition, these behaviors reinforced group cohesion and allowed trust to accumulate over time. Affection was both an emotional practice and an adaptive strategy, guiding interactions and reinforcing alliances. Playfulness remained a core mechanism for social learning and intimacy. Cooperative games, mock combat, and playful teasing taught limits, empathy, and coordination. Through laughter and gentle touch, early humans strengthened social bonds, reduced tension, and communicated emotional states. These interactions were foundational for understanding consent, boundaries, and trust, essential components of pair bonding and group stability. Observation and imitation continued to transmit emotional knowledge. Children absorbed patterns of care, strategies for reconciliation, and forms of affectionate expression by watching adults and older siblings. Through this process, emotional intelligence was cultivated and embedded in cultural memory, ensuring that the knowledge of care and social cohesion was passed across generations. As dusk approached and firelight flickered across the faces of early humans, acts of affection became visible in routine interactions. Partners huddled close, children leaned on caregivers, and group members assisted one another in tending fires, preparing food, or maintaining shelter. Every gesture, from the smallest touch to shared laughter, contributed to the intricate tapestry of social connection, bonding, and emotional stability. Affection, conflict resolution, and extended care networks formed the backbone of early human social life. They were deeply intertwined with survival, reproduction, and the transmission of knowledge. These patterns laid the groundwork for the sophisticated social structures that would emerge in later human societies, demonstrating that emotional intelligence and empathy are ancient and adaptive traits. Through touch, shared tasks, play, and ritual, early humans built systems of support that encompassed pairs, families, and the wider group. Their ability to understand, anticipate, and respond to the needs of others shaped both relationships and the collective capacity to survive and thrive. The legacy of these early emotional strategies continues in modern human social behavior, illustrating that affection, care, and empathy are as foundational as any tool, weapon, or shelter. As the long shadows of the evening stretched across the prehistoric plains, early humans continued to navigate a complex social world where survival, emotion, and connection were inseparable. Mating rituals were among the most delicate and nuanced expressions of early human affection, blending instinct, observation, and repeated gestures into a silent language of attraction and bonding. Partners demonstrated interest through shared attention, subtle physical contact, and acts of provision, gestures that communicated safety, reliability, and emotional investment. These behaviors were both practical and deeply meaningful, signaling suitability as a partner and willingness to cooperate across the challenges of survival. Early humans did not have the luxury of casual indifference. Reproductive success was intertwined with social cooperation. Affectionate gestures, offering food, sharing warmth, or adjusting a partner's position for comfort were central to establishing pair bonds that could endure the demands of daily life. By observing and responding to these cues, individuals assessed compatibility, reliability, and commitment, creating networks of trust that would support long-term collaboration and parenting. Pair intimacy was expressed in multiple dimensions. Physical closeness, touch, grooming, and coordinated movements served as a vocabulary of emotion. A partner brushing debris from another's skin or placing a hand on the back as they moved together conveyed reassurance and attention. These small gestures, repeated over days and seasons, reinforced the relationship, building trust and familiarity that could endure environmental stress and scarcity. Affection was thus inseparable from both emotional resonance and pragmatic cooperation. Rituals emerged naturally from these interactions. By consistently sharing food, tending the young, and performing coordinated tasks, early humans created patterned behaviors that symbolized commitment and trust. Even without spoken language, these routines communicated intention and emotional investment, establishing clear expectations for partners and group members alike. Through repetition, these rituals became the foundation of what modern humans might recognize as courtship or intimate partnership. Reproductive behaviors were closely linked with social structure. Early humans observed one another's actions carefully, assessing not only strength and skill but also attentiveness, empathy, and capacity for care. Individuals who demonstrated consistent attention to partners and offspring were more likely to maintain alliances, secure cooperative support, and achieve reproductive success. Affection, therefore, was both an emotional expression and an adaptive strategy embedded within the broader matrix of social life. Extended family networks amplified these dynamics. Affection, care, and emotional investment were distributed across multiple generations, creating a web of support that reinforced pair bonds and ensured survival. Parents, siblings, and elders participated in nurturing, protection, and teaching, modeling behaviors that would become standard practices for the next generation. Children observed these interactions and internalized the principles of care, learning the importance of empathy, reciprocity, and emotional attentiveness. Conflict within pairs or groups was resolved through nuanced strategies of attention and care. Subtle gestures, hand placement, leaning closer, cooperative tasks, mediated tension, signaling intention, and reinforcing bonds. These practices reflect sophisticated emotional intelligence, the ability to understand another's needs, anticipate responses, and repair trust. Affection was central to this process, functioning as both a calming mechanism and a tool for maintaining stability in relationships. Play continued to be a key medium for bonding and courtship. Mock hunting, cooperative games, teasing, and gentle physical interactions allowed early humans to explore social hierarchies, emotional cues, and mutual interest. Laughter and playful engagement communicated safety, trust, and emotional availability. These experiences were critical for testing compatibility, practicing empathy, and reinforcing pair bonds in ways that were both joyful and functional. Touch, proximity, and shared experiences became embedded in the rhythms of daily life. Partners sitting close during rest, sharing warmth during cold nights, or grooming one another communicated reassurance and mutual care. These acts, repeated over time, accumulated into patterns of intimacy and trust that guided both emotional and practical decision-making. The physical language of affection was, in effect, a precursor to verbal communication, encoding meaning through repeated gestures, attention, and responsiveness. Affection extended to the wider social network as well. Groups cared for injured or ill members, protected vulnerable individuals, and mediated conflicts through attention and cooperative action. These practices reinforced trust, loyalty, and social cohesion, ensuring that individuals were supported by both partners and the wider community. In this way, emotional investment became both personal and communal, shaping the development of early social structures. Evidence of ritualized behavior underscores the importance of these interactions. Artifacts, burial practices, and the arrangement of living spaces indicate deliberate attention to relationships and emotional significance. Objects placed near the dead, pigments applied to bodies or stones, and repeated patterns in habitation sites suggest that early humans recognized the symbolic power of affection and care. These behaviors not only expressed emotion, but created tangible markers of connection, extending intimacy into material culture. The evolution of pair bonding reflected both environmental pressures and emotional needs. Survival required cooperation in hunting, gathering, and child-rearing, while emotional bonds ensured trust, loyalty, and resilience in the face of hardship. Affectionate behaviors were adaptive, reinforcing pair bonds, promoting social learning, and strengthening community networks. Through these behaviors, humans cultivated relationships that were both emotionally fulfilling and functionally essential. Children were central to these dynamics. Caregivers modeled attention, responsiveness, and cooperation, teaching by example the practices of affection. Through observation, imitation, and participation, children internalize these behaviors, preparing them to form their own bonds and contribute to group cohesion. Affection, therefore, was both learned and practiced, creating a continuous legacy of care that spanned generations. Courtship gestures evolved into nuanced systems of attention. The timing of actions, selection of gestures, and consistency of care communicated interest, desire, and commitment. Individuals learn to interpret these cues, respond appropriately, and maintain relationships through cycles of need, reassurance, and shared activity. Affection became the medium through which early humans navigated both attraction and social stability. Even minor interactions were meaningful. Sharing food, adjusting a partner's position, or offering warmth conveyed intention and reliability. Repetition and observation embedded these behaviors into the social memory of the group, reinforcing trust, cooperation, and intimacy. Affection, therefore, was both subtle and powerful, shaping relationships and guiding social dynamics. Play, ritual, and cooperative work continued to reinforce bonds. Through shared laughter, synchronized movement, and gentle physical engagement, early humans strengthened pair bonds and established social norms. These behaviors created emotional and cognitive templates that supported group cohesion, conflict resolution, and intergenerational learning. The integration of affection into daily life ensured that survival, cooperation, and intimacy were inseparable. By observing the interactions of early humans, we can trace the lineage of emotional intelligence, empathy, and care. Pair bonding, courtship, and extended networks of attention provided the foundation for modern human relationships. The gestures, routines, and attentiveness that defined prehistoric life are echoed in contemporary expressions of love, loyalty, and nurturing. Affection, in its earliest forms, was adaptive, emotional, and enduring, a legacy that continues to shape human connection today. As the first light of dawn touched the horizon, early human communities were already stirring, their lives intertwined with the rhythms of survival, care, and connection. Affection, expressed through gestures, touch, and attention, continued to shape every interaction within the group. Caregiving was central not only for the survival of infants and children, but for maintaining the stability and cohesion of the entire social network. Individuals observed, anticipated, and responded to the needs of others, developing an emotional intelligence that allowed them to navigate both daily life and extraordinary crises. Infants were the primary focus of caregiving, but not the only recipients. Elderly or injured members of the group received attention and protection, demonstrating that affection extended beyond immediate kin and had both emotional and practical significance. Adults and older siblings participated in feeding, grooming, and comforting, ensuring the survival and emotional well-being of the most vulnerable. These acts were intentional, repeated and observed by younger members, teaching by example the social norms of care, empathy, and responsibility. Grief was another dimension of early human emotional life. Fossilized remains and burial sites provide compelling evidence that early humans mourned the loss of companions, partners, and children. Bodies were sometimes carefully positioned, surrounded by objects or pigments, suggesting deliberate attention and reverence. These acts were not merely ritualistic. They reflected recognition of the emotional significance of loss and an understanding of the need to honor bonds that had been formed through shared life and affection. Caregiving and grief were closely intertwined. In times of injury or illness, community members engaged in attentive acts to maintain life, bringing food, supporting movement, or providing warmth. Failure to care for the vulnerable would threaten not only the individual, but the cohesion of the group. Affection in this context was both a survival strategy and a moral framework. It reinforced trust, ensured cooperation, and demonstrated the value of each member to the community. Social bonding extended across multiple layers of the group. Pair bonds, family ties, and friendships were reinforced through shared activities, gestures of care, and attention to emotional needs. Individuals who demonstrated reliability, empathy, and attentiveness were valued, trusted, and often placed in positions of influence within the social network. This distribution of care and emotional investment created a resilient system, capable of sustaining the group through scarcity, danger, and internal conflict. Play and cooperative activities continued to serve as mechanisms for bonding. Children learned social norms, emotional cues, and the value of empathy through games, mimicry, and physical engagement. Adults used shared tasks, building shelters, tending fires, or preparing food to reinforce social cohesion and intimacy. Laughter, touch, and synchronized movement communicated reassurance, trust, and mutual understanding, demonstrating the adaptive function of affection and attention. Conflict resolution was an essential aspect of these social networks. Early, humans recognized that disputes could destabilize the group, jeopardizing survival. Gestures of reconciliation, hand placement, physical proximity, sharing, and grooming were employed to restore balance and trust. Even minor acts, repeated over time, communicated reliability, respect, and the desire to maintain social harmony. Affection, in this context, was a tool for conflict management, embedding emotional intelligence into the fabric of prehistoric life. The expression of care was both spontaneous and ritualized. Repeated behaviors, offering warmth, providing food, tending to injuries, became part of the daily social rhythm. These patterns communicated attention, loyalty, and intention, allowing members to anticipate needs and respond effectively. Through observation, children learned these practices, internalizing a framework of emotional responsiveness that would guide future generations. Extended family networks provided additional layers of support. Care and attention were not restricted to immediate parents or offspring. Siblings, aunts, uncles, and elders participated in the well-being of children and vulnerable adults. This distribution of affection ensured resilience in the face of environmental challenges, injuries, or scarcity, demonstrating that care was both a social obligation and a mechanism for survival. Affection within these networks was also strategic. Acts of care created bonds of loyalty and reciprocity, promoting cooperation in hunting, gathering, and protection. Individuals who consistently demonstrated attention, empathy, and reliability gained social influence, reinforcing the adaptive value of emotional intelligence. The practice of caregiving thus had both immediate survival, benefits, and long-term consequences for social organization and stability. Rituals surrounding grief and caregiving extended emotional expression into symbolic and cultural forms. Burials, placement of objects, and structured acts of attention communicated respect, remembrance, and ongoing connection. These practices reinforced social norms, allowing the living to acknowledge loss while maintaining cohesion and continuity within the group. Affection was not limited to the living. It extended into memory, demonstrating the depth and sophistication of early human emotional life. Caregiving was often multidimensional, blending physical, emotional, and social support. Feeding, grooming, holding, and guiding combined with attention to emotional cues created a holistic framework of care. Individuals developed an understanding of the needs of others, anticipating responses and adjusting behavior accordingly. Through these practices, early humans cultivated empathy, attentiveness, and the capacity for sustained emotional investment. Conflict and competition were also mediated through affectionate behaviors. Jealousy, rivalry, or tension within pairs or groups could be tempered by gestures of reassurance, cooperation, and attention. Early humans used touch, proximity, and shared activity to restore trust and reestablish equilibrium, demonstrating an advanced capacity for emotional regulation. These strategies ensured that bonds remained intact despite challenges, reinforcing both pair relationships and broader social networks. Play and cooperative engagement continued to strengthen bonds across age groups. Through mock hunting, games, and gentle physical interaction, children learned empathy, trust, and the dynamics of social reciprocity. Adults modeled these behaviors, demonstrating care and attentiveness while reinforcing social norms. Through repeated experience, affection and cooperation became ingrained, forming the basis of long-term social cohesion. Extended networks of care also facilitated the transmission of knowledge. Older members guided younger ones, not only in survival skills, but in emotional intelligence and social interaction. By observing attentive behaviors, children internalized lessons of empathy, cooperation, and mutual support. These lessons were reinforced through practice, ensuring that the principles of care and social bonding endured across generations. Even minor acts of attention carried significant weight. A touch, a shared meal, or the gentle adjustment of another's position communicated loyalty, concern, and reliability. Through repetition, these gestures created a network of trust, anticipation, and emotional responsiveness that shaped the entire community. Affection was thus both subtle and profound, guiding behavior, ensuring cooperation, and reinforcing bonds across the social landscape. Caregiving and grief, when combined with rituals and repeated interactions, created a durable system of emotional continuity. The practices of early humans, tending the young, assisting the injured, observing loss, established patterns of empathy and social intelligence that would echo across generations. Through these acts, affection became institutionalized, forming the foundation of culture, morality, and social cohesion. Social bonds were continually reinforced through coordinated activity, sharing, cooperation, and mutual attention during hunting, gathering, and shelter maintenance strengthened both emotional ties and practical collaboration. Individuals learned to navigate the delicate balance between self-interest and communal responsibility, with affection as the guiding principle. These networks, rooted in care and emotional investment, ensured resilience and continuity, allowing communities to survive and thrive in challenging environments. Touch, ritual, play, caregiving, and grief were interwoven into the daily fabric of early human life. They formed an integrated system of emotional, social, and practical support that allowed individuals to maintain intimacy, trust, and cooperation. Through these behaviors, early humans not only ensured survival, but cultivated the foundations of moral sensibility, empathy, and long-lasting relationships. The legacy of these practices continues in modern humans. Every act of care, every moment of empathy, and every ritual of attention is rooted in these earliest expressions of affection and social bonding. By studying the lives of early humans, we recognize that caregiving, grief, and affection are not merely cultural constructs, but deeply adaptive behaviors, essential for both survival and the flourishing of social intelligence. As the sun climbed slowly over the prehistoric landscape, early humans continued their daily routines, guided not only by necessity, but by a growing understanding of social dynamics, emotional cues, and intergenerational care. Teaching and mentorship emerged as central components of their societies, intertwining with acts of affection, observation, and cooperation. Children and younger members of the group relied on older, more experienced individuals to guide their learning, ensuring survival while simultaneously transmitting social and emotional knowledge. These early teaching practices were subtle yet deliberate, combining attention, demonstration, and repeated observation into a system that shaped both competence and character. Mentorship was often embedded within caregiving and daily activities. Adults demonstrated techniques for hunting, gathering, tool use, and navigation. But these lessons were inseparable from demonstrations of care. When a child struggled to imitate a task, a parent or elder would adjust their posture, guide their hands, or offer encouragement. These gestures were simultaneously instructional and affectionate, reinforcing both skill and social connection. Through such interactions, children learned not only the practicalities of survival, but the principles of attentiveness, empathy, and cooperation. Observation played a critical role in transmitting knowledge and emotional intelligence. Children watched the responses of adults to various situations, how they comforted the distressed, reconciled disputes, or attended to vulnerable members of the group. These patterns provided implicit instruction in social norms, the management of conflict, and the cultivation of trust. Learning through observation allowed children to internalize both practical skills and the emotional framework necessary for effective social interaction. Affection was inseparable from teaching. Guidance was accompanied by touch, proximity, and attention, signaling that learning occurred within a supportive, safe context. A gentle hand, a guiding touch, or a shared smile reinforced not only the lesson, but the bond between teacher and learner. These acts established trust, patience, and emotional reciprocity, laying the groundwork for cooperative networks that extended across pairs, families, and broader social groups. The transmission of care extended beyond immediate offspring to the wider community. Older siblings, aunts, uncles, and elders all participated in nurturing and mentoring younger members. Through repeated interaction, they modeled behavior, reinforced social norms, and provided consistent attention to both emotional and physical needs. This collective approach ensured that knowledge, empathy, and the principles of cooperation were shared, creating resilient social networks capable of supporting both survival and intimacy. Ritual and repetition were central to effective mentorship. Daily routines, food sharing, shelter maintenance, grooming, and coordinated tasks were both practical and symbolic, communicating care, expectation, and attention. Children learned by participating, observing and imitating these acts, internalizing both the techniques and the underlying social principles. Through ritualized repetition, affection and competence became entwined, forming the dual pillars of survival and emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence was not only modeled, but actively cultivated. Adults demonstrated empathy, patience, and attentiveness, responding to distress, injury, or emotional cues with deliberate actions. By observing and participating in these responses, children learn to recognize subtle signals, anticipate needs, and respond appropriately. This early training in emotional literacy allowed individuals to navigate complex social networks, maintain bonds, and cultivate cooperation. Conflict resolution was also part of teaching. When disputes arose, adults mediated using gestures, touch, and attention, modeling strategies to repair trust, restore balance, and maintain cohesion. Children observed these interactions and learned both the mechanics and the ethics of conflict management. These lessons ensured that the next generation could maintain pair bonds, family relationships, and community stability while navigating jealousy, competition, or scarcity. Play remained an essential medium for teaching. Mock hunting, coordinated games, and gentle teasing allowed children to practice social skills, empathy, and cooperation within a safe and emotionally supportive environment. Adults participated selectively, guiding actions, demonstrating techniques, and reinforcing boundaries. Through play, children developed both cognitive and emotional competencies, learning the nuances of attention, anticipation, and responsive care. Extended family networks strengthened the transmission of care. Through shared responsibility for infants, children, and vulnerable adults, knowledge of caregiving, empathy, and cooperation was distributed across multiple adults. Children observed patterns of attention, learned strategies for comfort, and internalized behaviors of reassurance and protection. These interactions reinforced social bonds, ensuring that the principles of care and emotional intelligence were embedded within the wider community. Subtle gestures conveyed significant information about relationships and expectations. Touch, shared attention, and coordinated actions communicated reliability, trust, and commitment. By participating in these routines, children learned the meaning of loyalty, attentiveness, and reciprocal care. Over time, these micro-interactions accumulated into an implicit curriculum of emotional and social education. The combination of mentorship, observation, and ritualized practice ensured that affection, emotional intelligence, and social norms were transmitted across generations. Children internalized strategies for navigating relationships, maintaining bonds, and participating in cooperative networks. These lessons were not abstract. They were grounded in everyday activity, tangible gestures, and repeated interactions that intertwined survival and intimacy. Even the care of elders was part of this system of learning. Observing, adults attend to older group members taught younger individuals respect, empathy, and the value of accumulated knowledge. Mentorship was bidirectional. Elders shared skill and insight while modeling attention, patience, and social responsibility. Through these interactions, children developed the capacity to participate fully in complex social networks, ensuring continuity and resilience. Affection, teaching, and emotional intelligence were deeply entwined with reproductive and pair bond dynamics. Individuals who demonstrated attentiveness, empathy, and reliability were more likely to form stable partnerships and cooperative alliances. By internalizing these lessons through observation and participation, the next generation inherited both practical skills and the emotional acumen necessary for sustaining intimacy, caregiving, and social cohesion. Touch, shared activity, and attentive guidance created an environment in which learning and affection were inseparable. Children internalized patterns of cooperation, conflict resolution, and care, preparing them to navigate the demands of social life, partnership, and family. Mentorship reinforced both skill and emotion, ensuring that survival, intimacy, and social intelligence were transmitted together, creating a durable legacy. Play, ritual, and collaborative tasks continued to be central in developing both competence and emotional depth. Through participation, observation, and guided practice, children learn to read social cues, respond with empathy, and anticipate needs. Affection provided the context, reinforcing trust, attention, and connection, while repetition and observation embedded these behaviors into lifelong patterns. By engaging in this holistic system of mentorship and teaching, early humans created a culture in which care, attention, and emotional intelligence were both learned and valued. The transmission of affection, conflict resolution, and cooperative strategies ensured that knowledge and emotional skills were embedded across generations, forming the foundation for complex social structures, moral understanding, and enduring intimacy. Through this process, every child observed, imitated, and participated in acts of care, establishing a continuum of attention, empathy, and trust. These networks of teaching and mentorship were not incidental. They were essential to survival, social cohesion, and the cultivation of emotional intelligence. By embedding affection into the processes of learning, early humans created both resilient communities and the emotional architecture that would define humanity for millennia. As the day stretched across the ancient landscapes, early humans continued to live in intricate webs of connection, care, and cooperation. By now, the threads of social bonding, caregiving, mentorship, and pair intimacy had woven into a complex tapestry that defined not only survival, but the emotional fabric of their lives. Cultural transmission emerged as a central mechanism through which knowledge, rituals, and emotional practices were passed down. These early humans were not merely acting on instinct. They were observing, learning, teaching, and internalizing patterns that would shape generations to come. Long-term pair bonds formed the backbone of this system. Affection, shared responsibility, and cooperation reinforced these partnerships over months and years. Partners coordinated in tasks essential to survival: hunting, gathering, tending children, and defending territory, but their bonds extended beyond the practical. They shared moments of intimacy, reassurance, and emotional presence that solidified trust and loyalty. Through repeated interactions, these partnerships created stability not only for themselves, but for the broader community, ensuring the survival of offspring and the continuity of social knowledge. Ritualized behavior, repeated over seasons, became one of the main vehicles for cultural transmission. Sharing food, maintaining shelter, grooming, tending the young, and caring for the elderly were not merely daily chores. They were structured acts imbued with significance. Children learned the rhythms of these rituals by observation, participation, and guided mentorship. In doing so, they absorbed the values and emotional principles of their community: cooperation, empathy, attentiveness, and the prioritization of long-term bonds over immediate self-interest. The emotional intelligence cultivated through caregiving, play, and mentorship provided the framework for broader social cohesion. Individuals could read subtle cues, anticipate needs, and respond with appropriate gestures, thereby reinforcing bonds across multiple layers of the social network. By responding to distress, offering comfort, and maintaining vigilance, early humans created resilient communities capable of surviving scarcity, predation, and internal tension. Affection was both a glue and a strategy, binding individuals and facilitating cooperation in all facets of life. Conflict management remained central to the stability of long-term partnerships. Early, humans recognized that disputes could jeopardize pair bonds, family structures, or alliances. They developed strategies, gesture, touch, proximity, and cooperative acts to repair trust and restore harmony. These practices required observation, patience, and an understanding of emotional states, illustrating sophisticated cognitive and social capacities. By integrating these strategies into daily life, they ensured that bonds remained intact even under the pressures of competition and environmental stress. Extended family networks provided further reinforcement. Grandparents, siblings, aunts, uncles, and other relatives participated in caregiving, mentoring, and emotional support, creating dense webs of attention and reciprocity. These networks stabilized pair bonds and facilitated the teaching of social norms and cultural knowledge. Children learned not only practical skills, but also the emotional architecture of their society, internalizing behaviors of care, empathy, and cooperation through repeated observation and participation. Play and social engagement continued to serve dual functions. Cooperative games, mock hunts, and playful interactions provided avenues for skill development, social learning, and the reinforcement of affectionate bonds. Adults guided these interactions, modeling attentiveness, patience, and responsiveness. Through these structured yet playful experiences, children and young adults cultivated the social intelligence necessary for sustaining pair bonds and contributing to group cohesion. Affection was expressed in countless subtle ways that accumulated into meaningful patterns. Sharing warmth, passing food, adjusting posture, guiding hands, or maintaining proximity all conveyed care and reliability. These repeated gestures created an implicit curriculum of emotional literacy. Early humans learned to interpret, anticipate, and respond to the needs of others, cultivating empathy and reinforcing social cohesion across families, pairs, and the broader community. Cultural transmission extended to symbolic practices. Artifacts, pigments, burial arrangements, and the placement of objects within living spaces reflect deliberate attention to relationships and social norms. These symbols communicated respect, memory, and emotional significance, allowing humans to externalize affection and bond across time and space. Through symbolic acts, early humans conveyed lessons of care, loyalty, and partnership that transcended individual experience, embedding these principles into the cultural memory of the group. Long-term pair bonds provided stability not only for partners but for the next generation, children, raised in households where attention, empathy, and cooperation were modeled, learned the principles of care through direct experience. They observed reconciliation strategies, affectionate gestures, and coordinated cooperation, internalizing these behaviors as normative and essential. These children became the next generation of competent, emotionally intelligent participants in social life, capable of sustaining both pair bonds and broader communal networks. Transmission of emotional intelligence was as critical as teaching survival skills. Early humans relied on observation, imitation, and active participation to cultivate empathy, attentiveness, and responsiveness. Mentorship ensured that these qualities were reinforced across generations, allowing cultural knowledge and affectionate practices to endure. Affection became both an inherited behavioral strategy and a learned principle, intertwined with practical survival and social functioning. Conflict resolution, caregiving, ritual, play, mentorship, and emotional attentiveness were integrated into a coherent social strategy. These patterns allowed early humans to maintain cohesion, nurture offspring, and sustain long-term bonds. The repeated interplay of affection, observation, and shared experience created resilient communities capable of adapting to changing environments and social pressures. In this sense, affection was both a tool and a legacy, shaping human relationships in profound and enduring ways. Touch, proximity, ritual, and shared activity reinforced the continuity of pair bonds, family structures, and social networks. Even in moments of scarcity, illness, or danger, these networks allowed individuals to rely on one another, ensuring mutual support and stability. Through repeated patterns of care and emotional attention, early humans developed social structures that were both adaptive and profoundly relational. Affection was not optional. It was foundational, guiding behavior, stabilizing communities, and transmitting cultural and emotional knowledge. The legacy of these early social and emotional strategies is visible in modern human behavior. Partnerships, family networks, caregiving practices, conflict resolution, and mentorship reflect patterns that have endured for tens of thousands of years. Through the integration of practical necessity, and emotional intelligence, early humans cultivated social systems capable of sustaining life, love, and cooperation. Every gesture of care, every ritualized act of attention, every playful or instructional interaction contributed to a continuum of human intimacy that spans millennia. By the end of the day, as the last light faded across the plains and fires flickered into night, these early humans rested within a web of connections. Partners leaned on one another, children nestled close to caregivers, and elders were attended by attentive hands. Through touch, ritual, shared tasks, and attentive presence, affection, care, and social intelligence had created a resilient, interconnected network that bound the group together. This network was the foundation for survival, cultural continuity, and the evolution of human social intimacy. Affection, teaching, mentorship, ritual, caregiving, play, conflict resolution, and symbolic behavior together formed the scaffold of prehistoric society. Long-term pair bonds provided stability, emotional expression, and continuity. Extended networks of attention and care transmitted both practical knowledge and emotional intelligence, creating a culture in which social connection was inseparable from survival. Through these intertwined behaviors, early humans built the foundations of human society, networks of trust, cooperation, empathy, and enduring intimacy that continue to resonate across time. As the twilight deepened over the ancient plains, the story of early human life began to coalesce into a pattern that reveals both the fragility and the resilience of our ancestors. Every gesture, ritual, play interaction, and teaching moment was a thread in the intricate web of prehistoric society, weaving survival, emotional intelligence, and social cohesion into a unified whole. By observing and participating in this world, early humans created systems of care and connection that were as essential to their existence as food, shelter, and protection from predators. Affection, in its myriad forms, was the invisible architecture supporting life itself. From the earliest stages of pair bonding, we see the foundation of human intimacy taking shape. Subtle gestures of attention, a hand resting on a shoulder, the sharing of food, the adjustment of a sleeping partner's position were not trivial. They were the language of trust and emotional investment. These interactions, repeated over time, reinforced reliability, loyalty, and mutual understanding. Early humans learned to anticipate one another's needs, respond to distress, and maintain bonds despite scarcity, environmental stress, or internal conflict. In this way, affection became both an emotional necessity and a practical strategy for survival. As pair bonds matured, extended networks of family and community added layers of stability and resilience. Elders, siblings, aunts, uncles, and non-kin all contributed to caregiving, mentoring, and emotional guidance. Children learned not only practical skills, hunting, gathering, tool-making, shelter building, but also the nuances of empathy, cooperation, and conflict resolution. These networks ensured that knowledge and affection were transmitted reliably across generations, creating a durable social fabric. Play, ritual, and shared activity were fundamental mechanisms for reinforcing these bonds. Through games, mock hunts, cooperative construction, and synchronized movement, children and adults alike learn to interpret social cues, communicate needs, and establish trust. Play was not frivolous. It was training, bonding, and cultural transmission rolled into a single activity. Through ritualized repetition, whether in the tending of fires, the preparation of communal meals, or structured grooming, early humans created patterns of care that became encoded into the very rhythms of daily life. Emotional intelligence, carefully cultivated through observation, mentorship, and active participation, allowed individuals to navigate the complexities of social life. Conflict resolution, attentiveness to vulnerability, and the anticipation of needs were all crucial for maintaining cohesion within the group. The capacity to understand another's emotional state, to respond appropriately, and to repair trust after disputes ensured that pair bonds, family units, and communal networks endured. Affection and attentiveness were therefore deeply adaptive traits, critical to both survival and the stability of early human society. Caregiving extended beyond infants and children to include elders, injured members, and other vulnerable individuals. Acts of attention, comfort, and protection demonstrated the integration of empathy into everyday life. These gestures created a culture in which every member's value was recognized, and survival became a collective responsibility. Through repeated demonstration, younger members internalized these behaviors, ensuring that the principles of care, cooperation, and social intelligence were preserved across generations. Grief, too, played a profound role in shaping social and emotional structures. Early humans mourned the loss of companions, children, and elders, using both ritual and attentiveness to honor the significance of these connections. Burial arrangements, pigment markings, and careful positioning of bodies indicate that emotional bonds extended beyond life itself. The experience of grief reinforced social cohesion, teaching younger members the importance of respect, empathy, and continuity of care. The evolution of long-term pair bonds reflects a deep understanding of cooperation, trust and mutual investment, affection, shared responsibilities, and repeated attention ensured stability, while rituals, play, and teaching reinforced cultural norms and emotional intelligence. Partnerships were not isolated. They were embedded within extended networks of support, creating communities capable of enduring environmental challenges and social pressures. These bonds, repeated and observed across generations, laid the groundwork for complex human relationships, marriage systems, and social networks that persist into modern times. Transmission of knowledge, both practical and emotional, was central to the survival of these communities. Mentorship, observation, and participation ensured that skills, rituals, and principles of care were internalized by each new generation. Children learned not only how to provide food, build shelter, or navigate their environment, but also how to nurture, empathize, and maintain bonds. Emotional intelligence was thus taught alongside survival skills, creating individuals capable of sustaining relationships, contributing to social cohesion, and perpetuating cultural practices. Symbolic behavior further reinforced these patterns. Artifacts, pigments, and arrangements of objects in living and burial spaces communicated values, emotional significance, and lessons of attention and care. By externalizing social norms and affectionate practices into material culture, early humans ensured that lessons of empathy, trust, and cooperation could transcend individual experience. These symbolic acts preserved collective memory, reinforced bonds, and allowed social knowledge to accumulate across generations. Conflict resolution and reconciliation practices ensured that social structures remained stable. Gestures of attention, shared work, and ritualized acts repaired trust and reinforced pair bonds and group cohesion. Even small gestures, offering food, touching a partner gently, assisting a child, carried social significance, communicating commitment and emotional investment. Through these repeated practices, early humans created resilient social frameworks capable of supporting both intimacy and survival. Play remained an integral component of emotional and social development. Through cooperative games, mock combat, and guided activities, children internalized rules of social interaction, empathy, and negotiation. Adults facilitated these experiences, reinforcing trust, attentiveness, and responsiveness. Play served both as a learning tool and a bonding mechanism, preparing individuals for participation in complex social networks and partnerships. Affection, care, teaching, and mentorship collectively created a durable emotional and cultural legacy. Through consistent observation, participation, and guided practice, early humans transmitted emotional intelligence, social norms, and cooperative strategies across generations. This legacy ensured the continuity of intimate partnerships, family structures, and broader community networks. The interweaving of practical knowledge and emotional acumen allowed humans to thrive in environments that were unpredictable, dangerous, and socially complex. Extended networks of attention ensured that the community's emotional and practical needs were met. Elders guided and mentored, partners sustained one another, and caregivers tended the vulnerable. Children observed, imitated, and participated in these acts, internalizing lessons of empathy, care, and cooperation. Through this transmission, both the knowledge required for survival and the emotional intelligence required for intimacy were passed down reliably. The intricate web of prehistoric social life, rituals, play, caregiving, pair bonding, mentorship, and grief reveals the deep roots of human connection. Affection was not a luxury. It was essential. It structured daily life, stabilized relationships, facilitated survival, and ensured the transmission of knowledge and cultural values. Through repeated gestures, ritualized behavior, and attentive mentorship, early humans created social systems that were both resilient and deeply relational. In the end, the story of early human affection and social intelligence is a testament to adaptability, empathy, and foresight. Through care, teaching, play, and ritual, they established networks of trust and cooperation that allowed both survival and flourishing. The practices they developed, gestures of attention, long-term partnerships, extended caregiving, symbolic acts, and emotional education laid the foundation for the complex web of human relationships that persists to this day. Every act of care, every moment of guidance, every ritual and playful interaction contributed to the evolution of human social intimacy. As night fell over the plains and fires flickered across sleeping bodies, early humans rested within their interconnected web of care and affection. Partners leaned on one another. Children nestled close to caregivers. Elders were attended with vigilance and respect. Through these daily rhythms of attention, ritual, teaching, and play, they ensured the survival of their community, the continuity of their knowledge, and the persistence of human intimacy across generations. Affection, in its myriad forms, was the thread that bound them together, the strategy that ensured their survival, and the legacy that continues to shape humanity.